the supermarket of shame. The scorching midday sun beat down mercilessly on the streets of São Paulo as Helena Moreira parked her silver Mercedes-Benz in front of the small neighborhood supermarket in Vila Madalena. At 52, the CEO of one of the country's leading tech companies, Helena rarely set foot in places like this. Her world revolved around the luxurious shopping malls of the Jardins district, with wide corridors, icy air conditioning, and no one ever questioning the price of an imported bottle of champagne. But something had brought her there that day. Over breakfast, her housekeeper, Dona Mercedes, had mentioned that the little market sold the best homemade bread in the area, a casual comment that stirred a wave of unexpected nostalgia in Helena. She remembered her humble childhood, tagging along with her mother to markets like this, counting every coin before reaching the register. Wearing a navy blue Armani blazer and heels that cost more than a minimum wage salary, Helena pushed her shopping cart through the market's narrow aisles. The contrast was jarring. While she curiously scanned the crowded shelves of basic goods, other shoppers stared at her with a mix of admiration and suspicion. Then she heard it. "Please, just give me a little more time. I promise I'll pay everything next week." The male voice echoed from the nearest register, so full of anguish that Helena froze. Hidden behind a shelf of cleaning products, she watched the scene unfold just a few feet away. A black man, about 35, was hunched over the counter, tightly holding the hand of a little girl around 8 years old. The child wore a simple but clean dress and hugged a worn-out doll to her chest. Her large, curious eyes shifted between her father and the cashier, not fully grasping the tension in the air. "Mr. Roberto, we already talked about this last week," said the cashier, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a bun. Her tone wavered between professional firmness and barely disguised compassion. "I can't keep letting you take items without paying. My manager has already warned me twice." Roberto ran his free hand through his curly hair, a gesture Helena instinctively understood as nervous. His clothes were simple but neatly maintained, a light blue dress shirt with small, nearly invisible patches, and faded jeans. His shoes, though polished, showed signs of heavy wear. "I understand, Dona Cleusa. I really do," Roberto whispered, lowering his voice so his daughter wouldn't hear. "But Leticia needs this asthma medication, and I haven't gotten last month's paycheck yet. My boss said I'll get it on Monday." The little girl tugged at her father's shirt. "Daddy, can we go? I don't want the cookie anymore." Roberto crouched down to her level, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a minute, princess. Daddy's going to fix this, okay?" By now, other customers were lining up behind Roberto. Helena's stomach clenched as she noticed the whispers and impatient glances beginning to form. "There he goes again," murmured a woman in a floral dress, shaking her head. "Same story every month. If you don't have money, you shouldn't be here." "It's shameful," agreed a man in a polo shirt, checking his watch. "I'm stuck waiting behind people like this." Something broke inside Helena's chest. The scene reminded her of painful childhood memories. Times her mother had endured similar humiliation just to put food on the table. The difference now was that Helena had the power to change it. Cabers and judgments. Roberto stood up slowly, defeat weighing on his shoulders like an invisible burden. Helena noticed how he took a deep breath, preparing for one more attempt to plead with Dona Cleusa. She saw every detail: his slightly trembling hands, the clenched jaw, the way he instinctively positioned himself in front of his daughter, as if to shield her from the shame. "Dona Cleusa," Roberto began again, his voice now softer, almost a whisper. "Leticia's been having attacks for 2 days. Her medicine ran out, and without it..." He paused, swallowing hard. "She can't sleep properly." The cashier looked at the little girl, and her eyes began to fill with tears. Dona Cleusa had worked in that market for over 15 years and had known Roberto since he moved to the neighborhood 3 years earlier. She knew he worked as a gardening assistant for a subcontracted company, that he had been raising his daughter alone since his wife left them, and that he had never missed a payment out of bad faith. "Roberto, you know I'd love to help," she whispered, nervously glancing at the security camera above the register. "But last time I did, my manager gave me a written warning. If I do it again..." "For God's sake, this is getting ridiculous," snapped the man in the polo shirt, now clearly annoyed. "Call the manager and get this guy out of the line. Some of us actually pay our bills." Other customers murmured in agreement. Helena watched in growing horror as the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Leticia clung more tightly to her father's leg, her eyes welling with tears as she sensed the tension in the air. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice small and frightened. "Why is everyone mad?" Roberto crouched down again, cupping her face gently in his hands. "It's not you, Princess. Daddy's just working out a little problem, okay?" "Well, work it out already," shouted a young woman rocking a baby stroller, her infant starting to cry. "My baby's getting upset because of this mess." Helena's breathing quickened. The scene before her felt like watching a slow-motion car crash, horrible and yet impossible to look away from. She saw Roberto rise again, his hands visibly shaking. For a moment, he looked directly at the people in line, and Helena saw in his eyes a mix of shame, despair, and wounded dignity that hit her like a punch to the gut. "I'm sorry," Roberto said to the line, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hold anyone up." He turned back to Donna Clausa. "Just the medicine for Leticia, please. I'll leave the rest." Donna Clausa hesitated, looking between Roberto and the security camera. Her fingers tapped nervously on the counter as she tried to mentally calculate how she could explain another exception to her supervisor. Then a new voice cut through the tension in the store. "Excuse me." Every head turned toward Helena, who had left her cart behind and was walking resolutely toward the register. Her heels clicked with authority against the linoleum floor, and her upright posture stood in sharp contrast to the shame that hovered over the line. "I'd like to pay for this gentleman's groceries," she said calmly, pulling a gold credit card from her Italian leather wallet. Silence followed. Roberto stared at her with utter disbelief, as if she were a hallucination. Leticia blinked several times, trying to process what was happening. Even the crying baby went silent. "Ma'am," Roberto finally managed to say, I can't accept that." Helena turned to him, and for the first time, their eyes met directly. In them, she saw a depth of pain and wounded pride that instantly reminded her of her father, who had died trying to maintain his dignity in similar circumstances. "Please," she said softly, "let me do this." The meeting of two worlds. The store remained eerily silent. Helena watched the internal conflict unfold on Roberto's face, the desperate need to accept help clashing with a deeply rooted pride. She recognized the look. She'd seen it in her own mirror during her youth, when refusing help felt like the only way to hold on to dignity, even at a great cost. "I can't accept charity," Roberto said finally, his voice respectful but firm, "especially in front of my daughter." Helena tilted her head slightly, understanding the complexity of the moment. She looked at Leticia, who watched the entire exchange with intelligent, curious eyes, clearly trying to grasp the adult dynamic playing out before her. "What if it's not charity?" Helena asked, surprising even herself. "What if it's an investment?" Roberto frowned. "What do you mean?" Helena took a deep breath, a crystal-clear idea forming in her mind. "I work in tech. My company always needs maintenance, landscaping, cleaning services. We're always looking for reliable people." She paused, studying his face. "How about we consider this an advance on your first paycheck?" The proposal hung in the air like a bridge stretched over an abyss. Donna Clausa held her breath, fingers still hovering over the register keys. The customers exchanged puzzled looks, clearly not expecting this twist. "You don't even know me," Roberto said slowly. "How can you trust me like this?" Helena smiled, a genuine smile that completely softened her expression. "Because anyone who fights this hard for their child, who holds on to dignity even in a moment like this, is exactly the kind of person I trust." Leticia tugged at her father's shirt again. "Daddy, the pretty lady wants to help us?" Roberto crouched beside her, his large hands framing her little face. "Princess, what do you think? She's offering Daddy a job." Her eyes lit up. "A new job? Does that mean you can buy my medicine?" "Yes, my love, it does." Leticia then did something no one expected. She let go of her father's hand and walked right up to Helena, stopping in front of her. With the seriousness only an 8-year-old could muster, she extended her tiny hand. "Thank you for helping my daddy," she said in a clear, sweet voice. "He's the best daddy in the world." Helena felt her throat tighten. She crouched down and shook the little hand, surprised by the girl's firm grip. "I'm sure he is," Helena murmured, fighting back tears. Roberto stepped forward, eyes wet. "Ma'am." "Helena," she said, standing. "My name is Helena Moreira. Roberto Silva. And this is Leticia, my daughter." He paused. "I accept your offer, Donna Helena. But please know, I work hard and keep my word." "I never doubted that," Helena replied. Donna Closa, who had watched the entire exchange with tears in her eyes, finally broke the silence. "Well, shall we finish this purchase?" her voice trembling with emotion. Helena handed over her card, but before Donna Closa could process it, she turned to the still silent line of customers. The man in the polo shirt avoided her gaze. The woman in the floral dress fidgeted with her purse. "Sometimes," Helena said, her voice carrying natural authority, "the only thing that separates us from someone in need is a single twist of fate. A lost job, an illness, an accident. We're all closer to vulnerability than we like to admit." Her words echoed through the store, creating a palpable sense of reflection. Some customers lowered their eyes. Others looked genuinely thoughtful. "Empathy," Helena continued, "costs nothing, but to the one receiving it, it can mean everything. Seeds of a new life." 3 days later, Roberto arrived at the address Helena had given him. A towering glass and steel office building in the heart of Avenida Faria Lima. He stood on the sidewalk looking up, trying to take in the magnitude of what was about to happen. The new uniform Helena had sent, a navy blue polo shirt with the company logo and a pair of khakis, still felt strange on his body. Leticia held his hand tightly, her eyes wide with awe. "Daddy, is this where you're going to work? It looks like a castle." Roberto smiled, a mix of nerves and gratitude swelling in his chest. "Yes, princess. And look," he pointed to a sign at the entrance. "They even have a daycare inside. Donna Helena said you can stay there while I work." "A real daycare with toys?" "With toys, books, and other kids to play with," Roberto confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. For the first time in months, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. They entered the main lobby, where a uniformed security guard greeted them politely. "You must be Roberto Silva. Mrs. Helena is expecting you." The elevator took them to the 20th floor, and when the doors opened, Roberto stepped into a space he'd only seen in movies. Glass walls, sleek modern furniture, carefully placed plants, and a panoramic view of the city that took his breath away. Helena stood waiting near reception, dressed in an elegant gray suit, but her expression was warm and welcoming. As soon as she saw them, she approached with a genuine smile. "Roberto, Leticia, I'm so glad to see you again." She bent down to greet the little girl. "So, what do you think of our castle?" Leticia giggled, enchanted by the idea. "It's beautiful. Daddy, look how big it is." "Come, let me show you around," Helena said, leading them through the corridors. Their first stop was the company daycare, a bright, colorful space on the 15th floor. Leticia was immediately drawn to the bookshelves, educational toys, and art room filled with supplies she had never seen before. "Aunt Marcia," Helena called to a young woman organizing activities for the other kids. "This is Leticia, our new little friend." Marcia approached with a warm smile. "Hi, Leticia. Want to see the new princess books that came in this week? They're beautiful." As Leticia was introduced to the other children, Helena took Roberto on a tour of his future duties. They visited the company's internal gardens, meticulously planned green spaces that brought life to the corporate environment. "I'll be in charge of all this?" Roberto asked, marveling at the design and complexity. "This and more," Helena replied. "I want you to know, Roberto, this isn't just a job opportunity. It's a chance to grow. We offer training programs, technical courses, career plans." Roberto paused and turned to her, his expression serious. "Donna Helena, I have to ask, why? Why are you doing all this for us?" Helena fell silent for a moment, gazing out the window at the city below. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of deep memories. "When I was 12, my mother had been unemployed for 6 months. My father had died 2 years earlier, and we were struggling badly." She paused, lost in the memory. "One day, in a market, the same scene I witnessed with you happened to us. My mother cried in front of everyone." Roberto felt his chest tighten at the emotion in her voice. "But that day," Helena continued, "a woman paid for our groceries. Not only that, she offered my mother a job as a cleaner in her office. It was the first step of the ladder that brought me here. She turned to Roberto, her eyes shining with conviction. That woman taught me that success only has real value when it's shared, when we use our power to lift others, not just to accumulate wealth. Roberto extended his hand, and Helena shook it firmly. "I promise you won't regret this, Donna Helena." "I know I won't," she replied, "because you remind me of someone I know very well, myself 20 years ago." The silent transformation. 6 months passed, like a dream Roberto still feared he'd wake from. The simple apartment he and Leticia shared had transformed, not because of luxury, but because the constant anxiety that once filled every corner was gone. The bills were paid. The fridge was stocked. Leticia hadn't had a single asthma attack since she began receiving regular medication. Roberto had become not just a model employee, but an unexpected talent. The company's gardens were now a source of pride and admiration. He had discovered a natural skill and passion for landscaping he never knew he had. "Daddy, look what I made today." Leticia ran to greet him at daycare, holding a colorful drawing. "It's you taking care of the company's flowers." Roberto carefully held the crayon drawing. He was smiling beside giant colorful flowers, with the company building in the background. At the top, written in big, uneven letters, "My daddy is the best gardener in the world." "It's beautiful, Princess," he said, kissing her forehead. "Shall we hang it on the fridge when we get home?" "Can I show it to Aunt Helena first?" Leticia asked, bouncing with excitement. Of course. They went up to the 20th floor, where Helena was finishing a video call with their London branch. When she saw them through the glass wall of her office, she waved and motioned for them to wait a moment. Roberto watched Helena work. Her confident posture, the way she gestured as she spoke, the natural authority in her voice, even in English. It was hard to reconcile that powerful woman with the kind person who had changed their lives. "Sorry for the delay," Helena said as she stepped out. "Conference with our London team. Time zones always make it tricky." "Aunt Helena, I made a drawing for you." Leticia handed over the paper proudly. Helena received it like a precious piece of art, studying every detail with sincere admiration. "Leticia, this is wonderful. May I hang it on my wall?" Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really, right here where everyone can see it." Helena pointed to a wall near her desk. As Helena carefully hung the drawing, Roberto noticed something that deeply moved him. The office walls held more of Leticia's drawings, framed, displayed like fine art. Helena hadn't just accepted them, she had made them part of her space. "Roberto," she said, turning to him, "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Roberto's stomach tightened, a reflex from years of bad news he hadn't fully shaken. "Our landscaping department is expanding," Helena continued, "and I'd like to offer you a promotion. Landscaping and garden supervisor." Roberto blinked, unsure he'd heard right. "Supervisor? With a team of 5 under you, a much better salary, and the opportunity to lead your own projects." She smiled at his stunned expression. "Roberto, you've transformed our green spaces. Clients comment, employees are happier, even our productivity has improved." "But I'm not trained to be a supervisor," Roberto stammered. "You have something better. Natural talent, dedication, and a work ethic that inspires others." She paused. "Plus, the company will fund a weekend landscaping course. No interference with work hours." Roberto's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Leticia, who watched with the serious face of a child sensing something important was happening. "Daddy's getting promoted?" she asked. "Yes, Princess," he managed. "Daddy's going to be a supervisor." She clapped and jumped with joy, making both adults laugh. "There's one more thing," Helena added. "The promotion comes with full health benefits, medical, dental, and—" She paused for effect. "An education fund for Leticia." This time, Roberto couldn't hold back the tears. They ran freely down his face as he hugged his daughter, whispering words of gratitude that barely captured the depth of what he felt. The circle completes. A year later, Helena strolled through the company gardens on a sunny Saturday morning. The transformation was striking. What had once been functional but plain green spaces had become a true urban oasis. Roberto hadn't just maintained the plants. He'd created small ecosystems, corners for reflection, even an organic herb garden that supplied the company's kitchen. She found him near the central fountain, guiding his 5-person team through the setup of a new project, a sensory garden designed specifically for the daycare children. Roberto now wore a different uniform, a green polo with supervisor embroidered on the chest and a clipboard in hand, jotting down notes with the confidence of someone who had found his true calling. "Remember," he told his team, "the kids are going to touch these plants. We need species that are safe, but also have different textures. We want to stimulate their senses." Helena watched with pride as Roberto moved through the garden with natural leadership. His posture was straighter, his voice carried authority, and his team clearly respected him, not just for his title, but for his skill and presence. "Good morning, boss," she said as she approached. Roberto turned and smiled, a full, genuine smile that replaced the tense, worried expression she remembered from that first day at the supermarket. "Good morning, Donna Helena. Here to check out our special project?" "I am, and from what I'm seeing, it's going to be spectacular." He dismissed his team for lunch and walked with Helena through the garden, explaining every detail with the passion of someone who loved what he did. "You know," Helena said as they stopped near the herb garden, "I have a proposal for you." Roberto laughed. "Another promotion? I think I'm dreaming big enough already." "It's not a promotion. It's a partnership." Helena turned to him, her expression serious. "I want you to consider opening your own landscaping company." Roberto stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "The company's growing, and many clients have asked for recommendations for residential and commercial outdoor projects. I'm proposing you start your own company, and we'll be your first corporate client." Helena smiled at his stunned expression. "Think about it. Roberto Silva Landscaping. Donna Helena, Roberto ran a hand through his hair, the nervous gesture she had come to know well. "This is a dream I didn't even know I had." "Then it's time to make it real. I can help with startup funding, contacts, even space to launch." Roberto was silent for a long moment, looking at the plants around him as if they might offer advice. Finally, he turned to Helena. "Why do you keep doing this? You've already done so much for me and Leticia." Helena smiled, an expression full of wisdom and experience. "Because I've learned something no business school ever taught me. True success isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we help others grow." She paused, looking through the window at Leticia, who was helping a younger child complete a puzzle in the daycare. "She's becoming an incredible young lady," Helena said. "She really is," Roberto agreed, pride filling his voice. "And you know what she told me yesterday? That when she grows up, she wants to have a company like yours, to help other dads who are sad." Helena felt tears threaten again. "Sounds like she's already learned life's most important lesson." "What's that?" "That true wealth is using what we have to lift others." Roberto extended his hand, and Helena took it firmly. "I accept your offer, Donna Helena. Roberto Silva Landscaping." "Partners then," Helena said, smiling. "Partners." Return to the beginning. 2 years later, Helena drove her Mercedes through the familiar streets of Villa Maddalena, but this time with a specific purpose. In the passenger seat sat a folder containing documents that represented the realization of a dream born in a supermarket 3 years earlier. Roberto Silva Landscaping had become one of the most respected landscaping companies in São Paulo. With 12 employees, contracts with major corporations, and a waiting list for residential projects, Roberto had exceeded all expectations, including his own. But today, Helena wasn't visiting Roberto's company. She was going back to where it all began, the little neighborhood supermarket. She parked in the same spot as 3 years before and entered the store, which looked exactly the same. The same narrow aisles, the same linoleum floor, the same familiar scent of cleaning products and essentials. The only difference now was that she knew miracles could happen in the simplest places. Donna Cleusa still worked the same register, her hair now completely white, but her smile just as warm. When she saw Helena, her eyes lit up. "Donna Helena, what a lovely surprise! How are you?" "Very well, Donna Cleusa, and you?" "Oh, getting by, you know how it is." She lowered her voice. "And Roberto? I hear he's doing great." Helena smiled. "He is. In fact, I came to talk to you about something important." They stepped away from the register to a quieter corner of the store, near the same cleaning aisle where Helena had once witnessed the moment that changed everything. "Donna Cleusa, I remember you telling me you've worked here for 15 years. "That's right. I started when my youngest daughter was born. And do you like your job? Donna Closa hesitated, surprised by the question. Well, it's honest work. It helps support my family. Helena opened the folder and pulled out some papers. I have a proposal. Roberto is expanding, and he needs someone to manage the administrative side. Someone trustworthy, experienced with customers, good with people. Donna Closa's eyes widened. You're offering me a job? I am. Better salary, full benefits, and the chance to learn new skills. Helena paused. You showed kindness to Roberto when he needed it most. That says a lot about who you are. Donna Closa held the documents with trembling hands, tears in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll think about it. No need to decide right away. Can I ask something? Why are you doing this for me? Helena looked around the store, memories returning from that life-changing day. Because kindness creates more kindness, Donna Closa. And because I believe good people deserve a chance to grow. At that moment, a familiar commotion echoed from another checkout line. Helena turned and saw a young mother with 2 small children at the register, clearly embarrassed, trying to explain she didn't have enough money. Please take the cookies off. They'll survive without cookies, the woman whispered, avoiding the eyes of other customers. Helena and Donna Closa exchanged a knowing look. Excuse me, Helena said, stepping toward the register. But before she could get there, a familiar voice beat her to it. I'll pay for her groceries. Helena turned and smiled as Roberto approached the register, wearing a smart shirt and holding a small basket of items. Leticia, now 11 and more mature, walked beside him. Sir, I can't accept that, the young mother protested, echoing the same words Roberto had once said. Please, Roberto said gently. Let me. And if you're looking for work, my company is hiring. We're always looking for good people. Helena watched the scene with a heart overflowing with pride. The circle had completed itself in a way she could never have predicted. Leticia walked up to the woman's kids, 2 little boys, and pulled a small book from her bag. Want to see? It's about a magical garden. My dad works with real gardens. Helena felt tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. This was living proof that kindness multiplies, spreads, and endures through generations. The Garden of Hope. 5 years after the supermarket encounter, Helena stood on stage at São Paulo's largest convention center, facing an audience of over 1,000 people. Executives, entrepreneurs, university students, and journalists filled every seat, all there to hear her keynote on empathetic leadership and corporate social responsibility. But Helena wasn't nervous. In the front row were the faces that truly mattered. Roberto, dressed in a tailored suit, proudly holding his award for Social Entrepreneur of the Year. Leticia, now 16, glowing in the uniform of one of the best private schools in the city, where she studied on a scholarship Helena had arranged. And Donna Closa, now the administrative manager of Roberto Silva Landscaping and one of the most respected women in the suits industry. 5 years ago, Helena began, her voice clear and strong. I walked into a supermarket to buy bread. I walked out with a lesson that changed not only my life, but how I see success and responsibility. She paused, allowing the silence to deepen. I saw a father being humiliated for not being able to pay for his daughter's groceries. At that moment, I had 3 choices: ignore it, feel sorry and move on, or act. I chose to act, not out of pity, but out of recognition. Helena gestured toward the front row. Roberto Silva taught me that behind every person in hardship is untapped potential, a talent waiting for the right chance, a story of resilience ready to unfold. Roberto smiled and nodded humbly, clearly emotional. Today, his company employs 42 people, many from backgrounds similar to his. He created a training program for the homeless, launched community gardens in underprivileged neighborhoods, and became a living example of how one second chance can transform not just a life, but a whole community. The audience erupted in applause. Helena waited for quiet before continuing. The greatest lesson I've learned over these 5 years is this: empathy is not charity. Empathy is investment. When we invest in people, when we recognize their potential instead of just their needs, we're planting seeds that grow far beyond anything we can imagine. She pointed to Leticia. This young woman isn't here today as a charity case. She's one of the top students at her school. She wants to study business and already talks about expanding her father's social programs. What began as a crisis in a supermarket became a vision for the future. Leticia blushed slightly, but her proud, determined smile shone brightly. True leadership, Helena said, isn't about amassing power or wealth. It's about using what we have to create opportunities. It's about remembering that our humanity is revealed not when we're on top, but when we reach down and lift someone else up. Helena paused, making eye contact with Roberto, Leticia, and Donna Cleusa. The most beautiful garden I've ever seen wasn't made with rare plants or perfect soil. It was made with care, with dedication, and with the belief that even the humblest seed can grow into something extraordinary, if it's given the right ground to grow. The audience rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. Helena stepped down from the stage and embraced each of her special guests. But it was Leticia who said what everyone felt. Aunt Helena, thank you for seeing the garden my dad could grow, even when he was still just a seed. Helena cupped the girl's face, eyes brimming with joyful tears. Sweetheart, I only watered the seed. Your father did all the growing. Roberto joined them, wrapping them both in a hug. We all grew together, and we're not done growing. As they left the convention center, Helena glanced back one last time. A new speaker was preparing to talk about technological innovation, but Helena knew the real innovation wasn't in machines or algorithms. It was in the human capacity to see potential where others see problems, to plant hope where only despair once existed, and to turn a moment of humiliation into a legacy of triumph, one life at a time.